What if I told you legacy media isn't dying in the way that you think it is? It's actually doing it to itself. Not just because of TikTok, not just because of YouTube, not just because of AI, although I must admit those are obviously factors, of course, but because it stopped doing the one thing people trusted it to do: bring the news. Not shape it, not spin it, not preach about it, just report it. Today, I want to break down what's really happening and why this matters to you. So guys, years ago, I remember randomly seeing an interview with Denzel Washington stating, "If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed."
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
So what do you do?
That's a great question.
Now, I'm pretty sure this could be Mark Twain's original quote, but the effect on me was the same. I was struck by the sudden realization that perhaps all along, maybe I've been misinformed. At least on some issues. I mean, journalists are humans like me after all. We all have our biases, opinions, emotions. So if flawed humans like me are the ones informing me of news, then it makes complete sense that I could potentially fall victim to believing and parroting headlines and thoughts of someone else, rather than diving a bit deeper to at least see the nuance in things and come up with my own thoughts.
I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself, thanks.
Or at minimum, make a fully informed decision and wholeheartedly agree or disagree with what I read. It feels like a catch-22 or damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And to be completely honest, I still struggle to this day to find balance. What I do know for sure, though, is mainstream media's reliability and obsession with speed over truth. And this need to be first, rather than accurate and prioritize factual reporting.
You can't handle the truth!
I actually remember a time in middle school or high school that I was interested in journalism, and I remember thinking I was going to be a reporter or a journalist. And you know how certain things from your childhood just stick with you? Well, for me, it was newspapers, like the Washington Post. I felt so permanent and official and established, like it would always just be there. And recently, all of that, I mean, that was a while ago. I no longer want to be a reporter or a journalist, but recently, all of that came rushing back when I saw the news that over 300 journalists at the Washington Post were laid off. Guys, that's more than like a third of their newsroom. This isn't some random blog, okay? This is the Washington Post, a newspaper that shaped politics, culture, history. Entire sections are being cut back. Sports, Metro, the book section, all gone. Their daily podcast, eliminated.
Gone.
And according to the New York Times, the executive editor said that the company has been losing too much money for too long and hasn't been meeting readers' needs. Because here's the reality. Being a giant in print media in the 20th century doesn't guarantee success in the age of the internet, social media, and artificial intelligence. Okay, the rules have changed, attention has changed, how we consume news has completely changed. And the editor even said, we can't be all things to all people. And that's kind of the big takeaway. Legacy institutions are being forced to rethink who they are and how they operate. So this isn't just about one newspaper. This is happening across the board with legacy media. And it's about what happens when industries that felt untouchable suddenly have to adapt or risk disappearing. And for us, especially as young people stepping into careers or changing careers, that's something worth paying attention to, because no industry is guaranteed. No brand is immune, not even the giants, clearly. The question isn't will things change? The question is, are you adaptable enough when they do? Because they will. Okay, guys, so let's zoom out a little bit. With the rise of internet and social media, news changed completely. Instead of sitting down with a newspaper or coffee or watching the 6 o'clock broadcast, we scroll. We swipe, we skim headlines. A little too fast sometimes. And we get quick takes, clips, threads, reaction videos, influencer commentary, quick media bites. All the stuff. Attention spans shrink. And I am guilty of this myself too. This is something I'm working on myself. Point being, things have changed. Platforms multiplied. Everyone became a publisher. And guys, I'm fully aware that I myself am somewhat expressing my thoughts here as fact, even in this video. So that being said, I urge you to even take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. This is purely what I think, my opinion. You could disagree, agree. But I like to think of my videos as me just expressing my thoughts out loud based on my moral framework and worldview, which for me comes from my faith in Christianity. I do not by any means consider myself to be a reporter or a journalist reporting the news, not at all. This is more commentary, I guess. And I also tend to think in silence a lot, mostly because most people around me aren't that interested in these topics. So I usually just ramble on and they're like, what is she talking about? Or here she goes again. She's just going to ramble on about something that's super random.
Have you ever had a dream that you do?
What the f*** are you talking about?
So this is kind of like my space where I can get all of those thoughts out of my head. And look, I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything. I have been, I am, and I will be wrong in my thoughts and statements. But I also, again, don't claim to be a journalist or a reporter because I'm not. I at least want to instill in you a moment of reflection, of pondering, a discussion, an opportunity to consider this as a possibility. So yes, legacy media lost readers, but here's the controversial take. They didn't just lose readers because the world changed. They lost readers because they changed. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Legacy media wasn't murdered by the internet. It walked away from objectivity. Now, let's be clear, perfect objectivity doesn't exist, okay? Humans are biased, naturally. We all are biased, whether we realize it or not. But there used to be at least an expectation, an effort to separate news reporting from opinion commentary. Now, those lines are blurry, sometimes gone. Journalism has shifted from what happened to what does this mean morally? And those are not the same question. Thomas Sowell once said something that hits pretty hard here. The issue is not what various journalists or news organizations' editorial views are. The issue is the transformation of news reporting into ideological spin. That's the shift. It's not about whether journalists have opinions, it's about turning reporting into persuasion. And once audiences start feeling persuaded instead of informed, truth collapses. There was a time when journalism sounded like this. All we want are the facts, ma'am. Today, that phrase almost sounds outdated because journalism has transformed from reporting to expounding, from observing the world to trying to change it. If you're an op-ed columnist, fine. Your job is to argue, okay? So that's not what I'm talking about. I know some of you might be like, well, what about the op-ed columnist or, opinion commentary? That's their job. They're supposed to give their opinion on things. Yes, but I'm not talking about that. I'm strictly talking about those who claim to be reporters, those who claim to just bring the news. So my point is, if you're reporting the news and claiming to be a reporter, especially an unbiased reporter, that's the whole argument here. I want to separate those two because I understand that there is a place and time for that, but I'm not talking about that. Okay, so guys, in 2020, a journalist tweeted something fascinating. He said that traditional view from nowhere objectivity journalism was a failed experiment and that industry needs to rebuild from a place of moral clarity. Now pause. That sounds noble, right? But here's the problem. Once you replace disciplined objectivity with moral clarity, who decides what's moral? Who decides what facts matter most? Who decides what gets emphasized? That's when journalism stops reporting and starts crusading. Bias doesn't always scream. It's not always super obvious. It whispers, which can be a lot sneakier. It hides in headlines and adjectives, the first paragraph framing, what's included, what's conveniently left out.
Sneaky. Yeah.
And once readers sense that, they adjust. You know what I mean? You read certain outlets and you mentally compensate. Oh, that's their angle. And then there are those rare reporters you trust almost completely. Why? Because you can't easily detect their bias. That's credibility. And credibility is like oxygen for journalism. When credibility dies, something dangerous happens. People don't run towards neutrality. They run toward their tribe. They say, if I'm going to be biased, I might as well consume bias I agree with. And that fractures society even more. Not because information exists, but because trust evaporates. Take the Washington Post. It's had incredible triumphs and real integrity failures. The noble press image that many people grew up with, it was never perfect even to begin with. So I'm not naive to that. I'm not trying to claim it was perfect back then because it wasn't. But it wasn't this. It doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be rebuilt. Imagine this. A major news outlet that swears off partisanship, that hires serious thinkers, that sends reporters into the real world, not just Google searches and AI summaries, that interviews people face to face, that edits and re-edits stories to remove slant or entire unedited videos, that says, our job is to tell you what happened, period. That might actually work. And here's where it comes back to you. If you're in college right now, entering media, politics, business, the tech world, well, quite frankly, for everyone it matters. We all consume media in some way, shape, or form. So really this is applicable to everyone and anyone. We're all consuming in some way, shape, or form. Industries don't collapse overnight. They erode, they drift, they compromise, and sometimes they forget their core mission. Journalism doesn't need to be warehoused. It needs to raise its standards. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Consumers have to raise theirs too. Because if we reward outrage over accuracy, well, duh, we get more outrage. If we reward spin over substance, duh, we get more spin. So the question isn't just, will journalism change? The question is, will we demand that it does? But what do I know, guys? I'm just some random girl on the internet just expressing her thoughts. What do you think? I mean, drop a comment. Do you think journalism is failing just because of technology or because of itself or both? Would you trust legacy media more if it returned to strict objectivity, or is it just lost forever? That's it for now, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.
What is the long-term effect of too much information? One of the effects is the need to be first, not even to be true anymore. So what a responsibility you all have to tell the truth, not just to be first, but to tell the truth. We live in a society now where it's just first. Who cares? Get it out there. We don't care who it hurts. We don't care who we destroy. We don't care if it's true. Just say it. Sell it. Anything you practice, you'll get good at, including BS.